In the 1970s, Britain moved on Bedford Lorries. They hauled bricks, food, fuel, livestock, furniture, machinery, and everything else that kept the country running. Before foreign manufacturers reshaped the market, Bedford trucks were part of everyday life. They were parked outside factories at dawn, rumbling through villages before sunrise, and sitting idle at depots late into the night. This was not just a truck brand, it was work. It was security. It was a future built one load at a time. For many families, the sound of a Bedford engine starting early in the morning meant another day of wages earned. These lorries were not chosen for prestige. They were chosen because they worked, because they were affordable, and because they could be fixed when things went wrong. In an era when Britain relied on manual labour and domestic manufacturing, Bedford lorries became part of the national routine. Here are 10 Bedford lorries from the 1970s that truly built a generation. Bedford TK. No Bedford lorry defined an era more than the TK. Although it first appeared in the late 1950s, the TK reached its peak during the 1970s. By then, it was everywhere. Construction companies relied on it. Councils used it. Farmers trusted it. The military adopted it. Small business owners built their livelihoods around it. The TK was popular because it was honest. It had no unnecessary complexity. The engines were simple and durable. Gearboxes were tough. Suspension was basic but dependable. If something broke, it could usually be fixed quickly without specialist equipment. The cab was Spartan, cold in winter, hot in summer, loud at speed. But drivers accepted that. The TK taught generations how to drive heavy vehicles properly. It demanded respect. You learned how to judge weight, braking distance, and road camber. For many drivers, their first professional driving job happened behind the wheel of a TK. It was where they learned responsibility. Bedford TL. By the mid-1970s, competition was increasing, and Bedford knew change was necessary. The TL was introduced as a more modern alternative to the TK, while keeping the same core philosophy. It was not a radical departure. Instead, it was an evolution. The cab design was updated, offering better visibility and slightly improved comfort. Controls were more logically placed. The driving position felt less cramped. For drivers doing long delivery routes, these small improvements made a difference. Fleet operators appreciated that the TL still used familiar components. Maintenance remained straightforward. Drivers transitioning from the TK needed little retraining. The TL represented Bedford trying to move forward without losing the loyalty of its traditional customers. Bedford KM. The KM was designed for tougher jobs. With its forward control layout, the KM maximised load space while remaining compact enough for tight working environments. In the 1970s, it became a staple on construction sites, quarries and industrial estates. Wherever raw materials needed moving in bulk, the KM was usually nearby, waiting to be loaded again. Drivers sat high, giving excellent visibility. That mattered when reversing into tight yards or navigating crowded building sites where space was limited and mistakes were costly. The elevated driving position also gave operators confidence when working among heavy machinery, pedestrians, and shifting loads. The engines provided enough torque to move heavy loads without complaint. They were not fast and they were not smooth, but they were consistent. A KM could crawl through mud, climb uneven access roads, and pull away fully loaded without drama. That reliability made it valuable in environments where downtime meant lost money. The KM was rarely pampered. Many were overloaded beyond their intended limits. Maintenance was often delayed, especially in small firms where work always came first. Yet they kept going. Panels dented, paint faded, interiors wore thin. Still, the truck started every morning and returned every evening. They became symbols of hard work rather than refinement. No one admired a KM for comfort or style. They respected it for endurance. If Britain was being built, repaired or expanded, chances are a Bedford KM played a role. Bedford TM. The TM marked Bedford's serious entry into heavy long-haul transport. Introduced in the early 1970s, the TM was Bedford's attempt to compete with European manufacturers in the articulated truck market. It featured higher power engines, sleeper cab options, and better motorway capability. While it never matched the refinement or longevity of some Scandinavian rivals, the TM offered something those brands could not: familiarity, affordability, a trusted badge. Thousands of British drivers ran TMs on trunk routes, overnight hauls, long motorway stretches, early morning deliveries at distribution hubs. For families dependent on haulage income, the TM represented steady work rather than luxury. It was not glamorous, but it was dependable. Bedford CF. The Bedford CF was one of the most important commercial vehicles of the decade. Sitting between vans and trucks, the CF offered versatility that small businesses needed. With box bodies, drop sides, refrigerated units, and specialist conversions, it could handle almost any task. For many tradespeople, the CF was their first step into independence. It was affordable, easy to drive, and tough enough to survive daily use. Bakers, electricians, plumbers, florists, and delivery drivers relied on CFs to grow their operations. Many businesses that started with one CF expanded into full fleets. The CF did not just move goods, it created opportunity. Bedford J-type legacy models. Even as newer models dominated showrooms, older Bedfords refused to disappear. J-type lorries from earlier decades were still working well into the 1970s, especially in rural Britain. Farmers and councils kept them running through careful maintenance and practical knowledge. These trucks represented an era when vehicles were kept for decades, rather than replaced quickly. Every noise had meaning. Every repair was learned skill. They were slow, outdated, and basic, but they were trusted. They symbolised continuity in an industry built on reliability. Bedford MJ and MK military lorries. Bedford's role in military transport shaped civilian driving more than most people realise. The MJ and MK series became standard military lorries during the Cold War era. Built for durability above all else, they were designed to operate in extreme conditions, from rough training grounds to remote deployment zones. Comfort was secondary. Reliability was everything. These trucks had to start in cold weather, carry heavy loads, and survive constant use without complaint. Thousands of young men learned to drive heavy vehicles through military service. Many had never driven anything larger than a car before enlistment. Suddenly, they were responsible for large, fully loaded lorries on narrow roads and uneven terrain. They learned discipline, mechanical awareness, and responsibility under pressure. Training went beyond driving. Soldiers were taught basic maintenance, fault diagnosis, and emergency repairs. They learned how engines behaved under stress and how small issues could become major problems if ignored. That knowledge stayed with them long after service ended. After leaving the forces, many moved straight into civilian haulage. Their experience with Bedford military trucks gave them confidence and competence. Employers valued them because they already understood heavy vehicles and work discipline. In that way, Bedford helped train an entire generation of professional drivers who kept Britain moving. Bedford HA and utility models. Small vehicles played a big role. The Bedford HA and similar utility models supported trades, service industries, and local deliveries. They were often the first commercial vehicle a young worker was trusted with. Learning routes, managing time, representing a business, all of that began in these vehicles. Though rarely celebrated, they were essential to everyday commerce. Bedford passenger and minibus variants. Bedford did not just move freight, it moved people. Minibuses built on Bedford chassis transported factory workers, school children, and community groups. In rural and industrial Britain, these vehicles were lifelines. They supported employment by ensuring workers could reach factories and sites reliably. They supported education by transporting students daily. Their impact was quiet but profound. Bedford export lorries. Bedford's reach extended far beyond Britain. Throughout the 1970s, Bedford lorries were exported across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. In many of these regions, British-built Bedfords arrived not as luxury imports, but as essential working machines. Governments, construction firms, aid organisations, and local transport operators all relied on them to move goods where infrastructure was limited or still developing. Their simple construction made them ideal for regions with limited service infrastructure. Engines were mechanically straightforward, components were robust, repairs could often be carried out with basic tools and locally fabricated parts. This made Bedford lorries practical in areas where specialist workshops and trained technicians were rare. Many were adapted to local needs. Some became water tankers in arid regions. Others hauled agricultural produce over rough terrain. Some were converted into buses, mobile clinics, or supply vehicles for remote communities. The same core design proved flexible enough to handle vastly different environments. Many of these export trucks outlived their British counterparts, remaining in service for decades. While British roads moved on to newer vehicles, Bedfords continued working abroad long after production ended. Their survival was not accidental. It was the result of conservative engineering and an emphasis on durability over innovation. Their survival became part of Bedford's global reputation. In many countries, the Bedford name became synonymous with reliability. Long after the brand disappeared from British roads, its lorries continued building roads, transporting people, and supporting economies across the world. Why Bedford lorries truly built a generation? Bedford lorries were not symbols of luxury or speed. They were symbols of work. They supported families. They trained workers. They kept industries moving. Before efficiency metrics, before global fleets, Bedford lorries represented honest labour done day after day. For a generation of Britons, Bedford was not just a brand, it was how the country worked.